making money with storage unit auctions. Today's story is a tale of debauchery, evilness, betrayal, and payback like a mofo. The title of this joint, The Audiophile's Wife. If you've been watching this channel for a while, you know that one of the best units to get is a unit of a collector. Well, I got the unit of a collector, but he didn't lose his shit. His soon-to-be ex-wife did. She was trying to work out an agreement with her husband. Just say husband. They weren't divorced yet, so he was her husband. But her leverage was in my hands. Got this unit. Just total surprise. I bought the unit. It was one of about 4 I had bought at this one location. Got the room in Tucker. Really nothing outstanding or special about it because door goes up. All you see are mattresses and some furniture kind of sticking up. No one really knows what's in there. I'm a gambler. I take chances. I'm not as risk averse as a lot of storage auction buyers. And I knew from that hallway it was big because this is one of the things that you need to do when you're in the office bullshitting. Usually on the wall somewhere, there's a diagram of the storage facility property. And in that diagram, it tells you the sizes of all the units based on unit numbers, location, everything. If you just pay attention, it's usually right there. So I'm looking at it, and I knew from studying that diagram, that room was a 10 by 30. Furniture, 10 by 30, you couldn't see anything. I knew the bidding wasn't going to get ridiculous because she really had enough, just that, your gut. Well, I bid, I just blew out a nuclear bid because I wanted the unit and I had to come back. So I just went 350. Going once, going twice, boom, it was a done deal because they were just like, pig in the poke, No one was really mad. No one was like, hey, it was crazy, but they didn't know how big it was. That's why I always tell you, it's very imperative that you know how big the unit is before you throw out the bid. The bigger the unit, the more stuff, the further your money goes. Well, I had bought units and I always worked out deals where if I had extra units, I got as much extra time as I could. About a week later, I'm at the property cleaning out rooms and we get to the room and it was big. So I was just like, hey, let's just take the stuff to the warehouse. The warehouse was in Tucker, so it wasn't that big of a deal. Come back and Lord, thank God I did that. That room was full from the ruler to the tutor. And as we got to about the midway mark, there was crate after crate after crate of albums. But not just regular albums. No. Sublime. Perfect. Cataloged. And this dude was so anal in some of the older records where there was kind of like, shelfware. He had tissue between the freaking album covers. When I saw that tissue, I was like, oh, these are legit. You pull out an album, and the guys that were helping me, they wanted to play the album. I was like, hey, don't touch that. Don't leave it alone. Because you could be messing up a very important album because these albums were unblemished. Some of them weren't even played. I was just like, whoa. And it was, like I said, crate after crate, but we were loading, so I didn't have time to count. But once I got back to the warehouse, 4,000 plus. I was like, out of that many albums, with the condition they were in, I knew there was some killer albums in there. But that is just the beginning of the story. About 4 days later, I get a call from the company that I got the unit. And they're like, hey, you still got that stuff? And at this point, I'm a seasoned vet. I know not to say certain things. It's like, well, I've liquidated it and I've gotten paid for it, but I still have possession. Let them know there's a third party involved, which is just like, hey, I've already made a deal with someone. Even though they were sitting in the warehouse, I was just not like, well, there's a certain collection in there and the tenant would like to buy that back. And I was like, really? The best thing in the room, that's what they want to buy. Who would have thought, right? And I was like, okay, so and this is where Google Voice, I had Grand Central Station at the time. I gave them that number because, you had a lot of control over it. So she calls me within minutes, not half an hour, minutes. Oh, I'm so glad. Yes, it's the albums. I would like to buy that back. How much do you want? And I just pulled a random number out of my head because I'm like 4,000 albums, $2 an album. I just told her $8,000, and I heard, I heard her breathe, and there was someone in the background, and I heard them, and it was like, how much? And she said 8,000, and they were like, apparently he knows, and I was like, I didn't know shit. I had no clue. I just knew I had a lot of albums that were in perfect condition, and I wasn't just going to give them away when that was the best thing in the room. I paid $350 for the room. I was going to probably elk out $2,000 profit on the furniture and other things, but the real juicy stuff was the album collection, so I wasn't giving that away. Even if I had to piecemeal that out on eBay and Amazon, I knew I was going to make some decent money off that. Just knew. What? I didn't know. Well, she's like, can we meet? And no, we can't meet. You don't need to know where these albums are. Oh, hell no. So you can hire someone to break in and steal your shit back? I don't think so. No. I say, there's really no point in us meeting. I've given you my price. And to be fair, I have a week that I have to make a decision on this. So I'm going to give you 6 days. If you can pay me, it has to be in cash. Cash only. I'm not taking a check. I'm not taking a credit card. It has to be cash. If you can't do that, that's your offer. So, I didn't hear from her for about 4 days, and then she calls. She just says, I got the money. And at this point, I'm like, holy shit, I messed up. She got the money, and she got it that quick? This must be worth a grip. But I'm sitting there like, damn, I'm going to win, and I haven't gone through the albums, and I was like, okay, you can get $8,000 now, or you could sell them over a year, and there might be some juicy in there, I don't know. Well, this is where it gets really, really interesting, because I had some connections, and I had put out that I had 4,000 albums. Well, one of my connects calls me, and he's like, hey, you still got those albums? And I was like, yeah. And I kind of gave them, like I said, the guy was anal. He had an inventory list, which made this real easy. Well, he's like, I got a client, and he is really interested in those albums because he's saying they're his. And I was like, dude, you know me, right? I was like, yeah, I know. You get your stuff. But he called me up, and he's just like, let me ask you this. He's like, are the crates red? And I was like, yeah. Are there tissue between the albums? I was like, yeah. And there was something else he asked. Oh, the guy also played like musical instruments. So there was guitar picks, and there was some other stuff among the albums. And he asked about the picks. And there was one particular bone one that had a red flex on it. And I was like, yeah. And then he said, okay, let me tell you what's going on. The guy, he's a good client of mine. And he said the magic words. He says he's loaded. I said, okay, I'm listening. He said his ex-wife moved everything out of the house when he was in Europe, and then filed divorce papers on him. And the only thing he gave a shit about in that house was the albums. And she was holding the albums hostage. And I was like, really? And he's like, look, I know this guy. He's legit. He will pay whatever. And then he started telling me, because the ex-wife to be was using the albums as serious leverage to get houses, cars. I'm a dude, and I've been there, and I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to help this dude. I've been there. I know if you've gone through a divorce and you've had those thumbs on your ass, and you're just like, damn, the whole world's against me. So just going on gut, I gave the guy, I said, give him my number, the real number. And he called me, and we talked about it. And then I told him what happened. And he said, oh, really? Well, he just was straight up, cut to the chase. He says, if I can get those albums from you, it's probably going to save me well over $1 million. And I was like, for real? Really? Because he was just straight up. He said, look, there's valuable stuff in there. The collection's probably worth around $30,000. I was like, holy moly. So he said, this is what I'm going to do. And I understand you're a businessman. You've talked to Fred. Fred knows you. He said, I will give you $15,000 in a truck from one of my businesses that I don't really care about. The truck's in great condition. I don't give a shit about it. And I said, deal. If you're going to give me $15,000 and a truck and screw this bitch in the process, I'm in. So, and this is the first time I've ever broken my word in a business deal, which I felt bad for about that much. And we meet. The guy comes. He's in the truck. It's a Ford F-250. Great condition. If you know about an F-250, had about 120,000 miles on it, but it was still pretty much new. And I was just like, I could sell this. Used it for a little while and ended up selling it. He came out. He pulled out, stacks, as they like to say in the hood. He pulled out stacks and put the money down. And his guys took the albums. And then I had to call her up, and I was like, I got a better offer. And she said, really? How much? I was like, 30 grand. She said, I can't do that. I was like, well, we can't work out a deal. Then I had his number, and I called him, some months back, and I said, so how the divorce worked out? He said, she hates me more than she hated me before because I didn't let her know that I had the album. She still don't know that I have the albums. I refuse to give in to your demands. And she got pretty much little enough. And then he broke down the whole story. She was cheating on him. He was an entrepreneur. So I know what happens. When you're an entrepreneur, you get real busy and sometimes you do neglect your family. But that ain't the reason for her to do the shit she did. That's just my opinion. But I wasn't there. Based on how she approached me, based on how he approached me, I'm with him. I believe his side of the story. But he told me she was scathing mad. And I'm just seriously like, if you're going to divorce someone, just move on. Don't be trying to hold something is really important in them hostage. To me, that's just foul. It's just happened to me. It ain't cool. Don't like it. But that is what can happen to you when you get in the storage auction business. All right, this is Glendon. We're making money with storage unit auctions.